Sit down and grab your lunch. It's time for the Bolts Brown Bag, the only show where you make the call.
Well, you knew it was coming, and we had to go literal with the Bolts Brown Bag today after yesterday's 37-0 embarrassment, humiliation in Miami against the Dolphins. Welcome to Bolts Brown Bag, our weekly Chargers fan show here at 10news.com. If you do not recognize me, Ben Higgins, your weekly host, and I am joined today by my special Brown Bag co-host.
Yes.
Who are you, mystery man?
I would be Mr. Movember because I've got the mustache and I'm ready, and that's really all I want to give up at this point. But, yeah, I'm Steve Atkinson, and I'm your co-host today, and I'm excited to be here, as you can tell from the joy on my face and the tears in my eyes. Excited to talk about the Chargers and what's in the future.
It really was one of the worst losses I can ever remember. Growing up as a Chargers fan here in San Diego, I don't really remember. I got the angry Bolt eyebrows.
You do.
Because it was such a bad Chargers loss. So, you know what? Let's go ahead and remove these because everyone wants to see your delightful face.
Oh,
Steve.
yes.
You're a handsome man.
Yes, I am. Thank you so
well
much.
loved here in San Diego.
You know what? When you first asked after about the first half yesterday and you started talking about Bolts Brown Bag, well, you joined me. I thought maybe we might be talking about Bilbo Baggins and J.R.R. Tolkien. So all that research that I did is out the window now, I guess.
Sorry. I couldn't even make it to the end of that game. I never check out early from a Chargers game. There's always surprising things that happen. I got to the fourth quarter, and what's the point of watching this? Phillip Rivers is out of the game. They got Kellen Clemens in there. Why are we still watching this game? And yeah, I went out to think I'd get a haircut, but everyone else had the same idea.
Everything
too,
on social media was the same thing. Facebook or Twitter, people were talking about, I can't watch this game anymore. I'm turning it off. I'm going to go do some grocery shopping or get some errands. And that's the thing about San Diego. You don't play well for the Chargers. People are going to be out. They're going to go surfing. They're going to go bike riding. They're going to do something else. They'll find something else to do because they can't watch that. It was a disaster.
So I was in the newsroom this morning, and one of our producers, Allison Horn, does our midday show, said, I've got all this leftover candy. Can you use it for the Bolts Brown Bag show? And I was thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. I mean, we don't want to wreck our appetite. I mean, we have lunch out here every day. But I started to think that it's actually kind of symbolic of the Chargers because I started pulling out candy bars, and I saw the first one was, Butterfingers.
Yeah.
Which
there was a lot of that yesterday.
4 turnovers for the Chargers, nearly doubled their season total. They lost their first fumble of the season when Phillip Rivers lost one. And then I brought out, and then there was Crunch, which was the sound the Dolphins defense made. Continually hitting the Chargers offense.
You're on a roll. Keep going.
And then there's Laffy Taffy, which, I mean, you're either going to laugh or you're going to cry about
that
the
was
performance.
right about the time Phillip got pulled from the game.
Yeah, it was just you had to laugh. It was so sad. And chocolate taffy? Who's chocolate taffy? I mean, really?
I'd eat it.
You would eat it?
I would eat it.
And then there was the Baby Ruth. Okay. And I really had trouble figuring out exactly how to work Baby Ruth into it. So I had to come up with the idea that Baby Ruth supposedly named after Grover Cleveland's daughter, President Ruth Cleveland.
Yeah.
And she scored as many points as the Chargers did yesterday.
You went deep on that.
Yeah, that was the toughest. Good. You know, and that's a total bogus lie, by the way. A little candy history today. Baby Ruth was named when Babe Ruth was at the height of his popularity in the 20s, but they didn't want to pay him for an endorsement. So they said, we're naming it after little baby Ruth Cleveland, who was a baby in like 1880, like 40 years before. Grover Cleveland was out of office for decades, but they just got around that.
I like how you worked that into the Chargers, though.
You know, it's funny. This is probably at work as well. You're always left with the crummy candy at work that didn't get given out at Halloween, that people didn't want to keep around at their house. So you've got just buckets of it in the office now that, the people at work will eat it. They'll eat anything.
Well, that's why people who watch 10 News between now and Thanksgiving, you'll see me gain about 15 pounds because this stuff sticks around for about that long.
It's just there. It's there for weeks, months even. I mean, it'll be like Easter and we'll still be eating Halloween candy around here.
That's what
never gets out. All right, we got a poll question up. 10news.com. If you're watching on our Bolts Brown Bag page, it should be there right along the right side of your screen. And since it's the bye week, we've gone through 9 weeks of the season, thought I'd keep it simple and just ask Chargers fans to give the team a grade at this point in the season. Not for yesterday. That's painfully obvious. Yeah. That's an F.
Yeah.
That's a clear F. But for the entirety of the season, 5-4 record going into the bye week, you had a nice win over Seattle. You went on the road. You beat Buffalo. You lost to the 3 in a row now. You've hit a lull. What is your grade for the Chargers? I don't have the pluses and minuses there. It's A, B, C, D, or E, or F.
Yeah.
There's no E. But if you want to tweet at Bolts Brown Bag with comments, if you want to be a little more specific, hey, it's a B minus, it's a C plus. We'll read some of the comments on the show as we go along as well. So what would be your answer, though, just quickly, for the Chargers' grade at this point in the season?
I'd have to give them a C. I don't think you can go anywhere other than that. They're not. Okay, look, let's break it down. Yesterday was a great assessment of the entire league. You had this top tier of the Patriots who proved against the Broncos, we're better than you. Granted, that game was played in Foxborough, but that shows you that's the top tier team. Below that's the Broncos. Then you've got this whole level of Pittsburgh and the Ravens, who had a great playoff game, or what would be considered a divisional type of game yesterday. Below that, anything else, you're talking about a C grade. I mean, they've had injuries one after another from the first week on, so give them some credit there, but they're not an F. F was yesterday's game. They're not a D, so they're somewhere right in the middle, and there's potential as you look at the schedule going forward, but it only gets tougher from here.
To me, I mean, they were clearly at an A through 6 games. At 5-1 with their only loss to Arizona, and the Cardinals still have the best record in the entire NFL right now, and the Chargers were up 11 in the fourth quarter of that game. They were so clearly an A through 6 weeks of the season, and now it's been loss, and I can't disagree with your C at this point. And it's trending downward, and the Chargers really, I mean, they really have hit a crossroads, and we'll talk about that as we move forward. But the season could be lost very quickly now coming out of the bye. If they don't come out hot, beat the Raiders, beat the Rams, you got that tough stretch at the end against the Ravens, the Patriots, the Broncos, the 49ers, and the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. I mean, if they don't win these next 2, it's going to be very hard to get back to the playoffs.
Covered football for many years with the Cowboys and the Broncos in the late 90s and 2002 to 2006 in Denver. Every team going into the bye week, one thing they wanted was to have at least that win because it's that momentum. This is the absolute worst possible thing that could happen to the Chargers because you're coming off not only a loss, but the worst loss that you've faced in decades, and you're 3 losses, and you're going into that bye week. So all you've got is that terrible taste in your mouth, and the players are thinking about that, even though they say they won't.
I will say this. I was thinking the same thing going into the game. Hey, you want to win, you want to feel good going into your bye week. That's great for the players on their vacation. It might be nice for fans to feel good about the team, but if you want the team to be inspired, a little angry, maybe putting a little extra time in over the bye week, maybe a loss and an embarrassing loss isn't the worst thing that could possibly happen to a team.
Spin it any way you want to.
I don't know.
Yeah, you could look at it either way. It can be spun one way or the other, but the thing is you come back and what do you gain? You're facing the Raiders at home, who are 0-8 when you come back off. So if you win, you're not really proving much. You're playing them here at home, and that's the Raiders who are 0-8 right now. St. Louis looks like a pretty decent team now, so who knows? But you got to get on a roll. And the tough part of your schedule, the best thing for the Chargers right now, if you're going to get into the playoffs, beat the best teams that are going to be in the playoffs, and that's exactly what they're facing in November and December.
If you want to join us, if you're upset and you just need to vent, we got the phone number up there on the screen. Call us up, 619-717-6704 if you want to take part in the Brown Bag. Do we have our What's for Lunch? Where's Brandon? Have we seen him around? No? Are we? Is candy? Is that's what's for lunch here today?
Sizzling salmon
we got
salad.
all that in the Brown Bag today. All right. Well, we got candy. If he comes out, we'll have what's for lunch. But let's go back because after the game yesterday, Steve, I don't remember covering a team. I mean, maybe after a devastating playoff loss, but that's more the disappointment that a season's over. Mm-hmm. A team that has been so shell-shocked by their own performance. Let's listen in on some of the comments by the Chargers after the game yesterday from the locker room in Miami.
I don't know that there's many guys that can say they've been beat like this ever, in going all the way back to 5 years old.
We got destroyed. I mean, that's as bad as a game I've ever been a part of. So it's very humbling and extremely disappointed in the way we came out today with so much on the line.
We were out-coached, outplayed. It all starts with me as the head coach. We got to do a better job in all areas.
I was terrible, and when the quarterback's terrible, it's hard to win.
Words can't explain how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric Weddle right there, that kind of stuck with me after the game, that he really just was at a loss for words because.
What else can you say, though?
But this is not a team that we've ever seen play like this. Even under Norv Turner, you really don't remember a performance like this. Certainly not under Mike McCoy, who's run a pretty tight ship in a season and a half and has had them prepared for just about every game that they've come out for. I was shocked. I was really shocked by yesterday's performance.
Well, and I'm not going to make excuses for the Chargers. It was a bad game. They didn't have any excuses whatsoever. But look at what happened. First of all, they travel all the way across the country. You're playing against Miami, who's been at home for a while. They're on a roll. Things are good. You're playing against a Miami football team who Joe Philbin goes away for 3 days to go spend some time with his father who dies. It's this emotional thing. He comes back just in time for the game. Let's win it for Joe type thing. There's a lot of emotions that go into it. Okay, you have the fourth down play in the first quarter. I don't believe in momentum. I love the call. I love the fact that they tried to go for it. But that's where things begin to shift. And you got this other team who's got momentum as well. They get paid a lot of dollars too. And that's a good football team. They didn't look that good at the beginning of the season. Miami's a really good football team.
They're a quality team. And anyone who doesn't think so, that was definitely a solid performance by a solid team. Still doesn't excuse the fact that the Chargers – never made it across midfield after their first drive. I mean, this is an elite offensive team. They have been since Phillip Rivers took over as quarterback. They score 20, 30 points almost every single game. To get shut out, to be so ineffective, that's what stunned me the most. And I was talking with Bill Griffith earlier inside, and I didn't have a chance to respond to him then, so I will now. And he said that fourth down on the first drive, when the Chargers went for it on 4th and 1, he goes, you got to take the points there and get off to a better start. You can't risk that. And I totally disagree. I think you take the points there, you lose 37-3 instead of 37-0. I love the aggressiveness. It's what I think Mike McCoy's been missing from his coaching. When it's 4th and 1 and you got an offense like the Chargers, you're going to convert that more than half the time. You go on and score 7 points. Well, you know what? 2 field goals is 6. So you only need to be, converting that half the time and scoring a touchdown to make it worth your while. So I like the decision.
Right.
Bad execution, maybe a bad play call, but I like the decision to be aggressive early. Usually that fires up a team.
Right.
So I'm not blaming that 4th down call at all.
This is why I talk about momentum, and I agree with you there. Even if they had gone for it on 4th down and then went on to score, I still think they would have been beaten 37-7. That's just the way that Miami was playing yesterday. They were a much better team. They had their heads into it. But I do love the call for the aggressive nature of it. That's what I like to see for the future. That's what I want to see.
All right, we found our sous chef, Brandon Chambers. What's for lunch? We're not just eating a bowl of candy. That's good. Better for our health. And it looks like you've gone healthy today.
Yeah,
what do we got on the menu, Brandon?
Today we have the crispy chicken salad. It's the olives with red onions, celery, tomatoes, cucumbers, and what I did is toss it in some balsamic dressing and drizzled it with some ranch dressing to top it off.
I love when you combine both the vinaigrette with a little bit of ranch or blue cheese. Great combination. Good thinking, Brandon.
Yes.
I love it. It's pretty, too, the way you've presented it nicely.
Such colors. I feel so much better, Brandon.
Had to break the colors up.
I just feel healthy.
Yeah.
I feel healthy. I mean, you play football.
Yes.
Have you ever had a loss like what the Chargers experienced yesterday?
I've had a few losses.
Okay.
Pretty bad too, but what I seen yesterday was just great, sound, fundamental football from Miami. That's what it really was, and the Chargers just couldn't really get off the rebound. Like, they just couldn't get going. I think it was just from the heat and then just that far travel, and they didn't have all the starting players that they needed to get the game going for them.
Let me run a pet theory by both of you from the game yesterday. At least what I saw. The Chargers against Peyton Manning got beat deep a couple of times, and Mike McCoy hates that. I mean, he talks about it. They cut Richard Marshall after the game, after he got beat. It's obviously a sticking point, a priority for the Chargers. So, to me, it looked like they went into the game and said, okay, we're not going to get beat deep again. And they gave Ryan Tannehill, who's not going to be throwing deep anyway, everything he wanted underneath. And they said, we're not going to get beat deep. So Ryan Tannehill did what he loves to do and just pecked the Chargers to death during the game. And when you're not getting any pressure at all, I mean, it was just easy for the Miami Dolphins to keep moving the ball down the field.
Yes, it really was. I like the new receiver core that the Miami Dolphins have, the additions that they have.
Wallace and Hartline.
Yes,
yeah,
that makes a big difference for Tannehill to have options now, and he doesn't have to just focus on just Hartline the whole time. And now that Wallace is out there, that's the deep threat. So it's like, oh, now I got to worry about the deep pass, or since Tannehill was saying he likes to throw it, dink and dunk. So Chargers give that up, I'll take it all day too.
Wallace, one of the fastest receivers in the league.
Yes.
So I got to ask you, Brandon, what's your 40 time?
I run a 4.4, a mid 4.4.
4.4.
Yes.
Steve, do you know what your
Mine's about a 6'3".
Yeah. Mine is about 4.5 minutes. So
that's
yeah,
pretty fast.
I'm slow. I am very, very 4.4. I mean, that's
Sign
NFL
him up.
quality.
I gotta
you-
get moving. I
Are
don't
you
like to be
free in a
tackled,
couple
really.
weeks because the Chargers could use you?
That's
I
amazing.
hope so.
That's amazing.
They gonna pay me?
Chef Charles must love you. How your speed back there.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
you
gotta-
must be the
he's-
fastest chef in San Diego.
He's the one who made me get that fast speed right there.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Kraken, well, you better get back there. And,
All right, thanks
and
for having me.
Thanks, Brandon.
you're about 20 yards away, so you have 2.2 seconds to get back
You got
into
it.
the kitchen.
Pew, I'm gone.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Brandon.
right, Steve, let's go through where the Chargers are at this point.
Okay.
9 games into the season at the bye. First of all, in the AFC West, the Chargers were in first place 3 weeks ago. They have fallen all the way down to third place now with their 3 straight losses. The Denver Broncos lead. We got the standing 6-2. And then the Kansas City Chiefs, who have all of a sudden gotten hot, they've passed the Chargers in the standings at 5-3, and they own a tiebreaker over the Chargers based on the head-to-head win at Qualcomm Stadium a couple of weeks ago. The Chargers, there you go, are in third place at 5-4. The Raiders are out of it at 0-8, but could still, anyone who loses to the Raiders, their season's probably now pretty much over. So the Chargers have a lot of work to do because they don't have the tiebreakers against either Kansas City or Denver, and they're looking up at both of those teams in the standings.
Well, and that's where you got to hope, and this is what this next slide right here.
This is crazy.
This is the one that's going to be the difference here. You got to play for second in your division probably. Just like last year, you got to move up 4 spots because you're on the outside looking in with the Chiefs holding that 6th spot right now. But again, where were they at this time last year? 4-5?
They were 4-5. Eventually, we're going to be 5-7, and had to win their last 4 to get in. But when you look at the wild card standings right there, the Chargers were 5th. They were in as the first of the 2 wild cards going into the game yesterday. That loss dropped them all the way to 10th now, and they're behind a Dolphins team they've lost to and a Chiefs team that they've lost to as well, and still have games against the Ravens and another one against the Chiefs later in the season.
That's the key.
Those are going to be those games that may decide the playoffs. And they're both on the road. At Baltimore and at Kansas City. Such critical games in hostile environments. Could be cold in both places, snowy, who knows, late in the season.
Don't forget about St. Louis. St. Louis has beaten Seattle and San Francisco now, 2 teams in their own division. That's not a bad football. It's not a great football team, but it's a football team that could just throw off your entire schedule if you're not prepared for them.
It's no longer the free game you thought it might be when Sam Bradford went out for the season and you saw them coming in. But it's one the Chargers have to win. I mean, the best case scenario now, Chargers get healthy at the bye. They figure out what they've been doing wrong. They beat the Raiders. They find a way to beat the Rams. Okay, now they're 7-4.
Okay. With
5 tough games left in the season. When you looked at those wild card standings, and you can throw them up maybe one more time if we've got them, there are 11 teams in the AFC right now with 5 or more wins. You've got to figure at least 2 of those teams are going to find a way to get to 10 wins at the end of the season. 9-7 was good enough for the Chargers last year. I don't think 9-7 is going to get them in this year. So even if they get to 7-4, they're probably going to have to go 3-2 against that tough stretch at the end of the season to get into the playoffs. That means you're going to have to win at least 1 on the road against either Baltimore, San Francisco, or Kansas City. And that's if you can sweep the Patriots and the Broncos at home, which, I mean, I'd take a split right now if you offered it to me. Get one of those 2, but then you'll have to win 2 out of those 3. I know San Francisco has had some struggles. They lost yesterday. Maybe they'll be vulnerable at the end of the season. Maybe somehow you beat Baltimore or Kansas City. But, man, all of a sudden, the Chargers have gone from cruising on toward the playoffs to giant uphill climb again.
I saw something, and I think it was Kevin Acey's tweet yesterday, who said, I would put the Chargers inactive list up against any other inactive list in the NFL right now. And that's where this comes into play, where possibly if you can get some of those guys back, one or two at the most. I mean, and you got two starters who are definitely not coming back whatsoever. But you got a couple of guys. If you can get some of that happening and you get some momentum going, who knows? I agree with you. You get the split between the Patriots and the Broncos, one of those two at home, anything can happen. The 49ers are beatable. You know, they're beatable. That's a road game. The Chiefs, you know, anything can happen between any of those teams. There's always a steal in everybody's house. So that's very possible to do that in Kansas City. But if they got that momentum, it's the 16th game, 17th game of the season at the end of the year, and the Chiefs and the Chargers are playing for that last playoff spot, that's not a good position you want to be in.
All right, every week on Inside Bolts Brown Bag, I give out a Bolts Brown Bagger of the Game award, and I got to say, it was tough to find someone to single out on the positive side for this game, but I did find one guy who maybe meets the criteria, so let's give it out. We got the sound effect at least.
We got that.
And the Bolts Brown Bagger of the game
is it me?
Is, drum roll, there we go, rookie Chris Davis, cornerback who returned 7 kicks yesterday and averaged 29 yards per return, which is 7 yards longer than the longest kickoff return the Chargers had all season, which was 22 yards. Now, they'd only returned 4 kicks all season, which was because their defense had played well, and most kickers now send it into the end zone and out of the end zone for a touchback. But he actually showed some ability, some life. And you remember Chris Davis, you watch college football, had the famous field goal miss return for Auburn to beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl last year. I think one of the top 5 plays in college football history.
Of all time.
Yeah, of all time. So, you know, he's got the ability to make some plays. It's taken a while for the Chargers maybe to trust a rookie in that situation, but I liked what I saw from Chris Davis, and I can't say that about just about anyone else on the field yesterday.
That's where I consider him what I like to call a sprinkle guy. You know, you've got all these great draft picks, and Chris Davis should have been one of these guys you just sprinkle on, you know, that really adds to it. So when he's your best player that you have in a game in a disaster like yesterday, that's when you know things are bad. There's just too many injuries with this team.
All right, I want to go through a few of the tweets that we've got in here from our poll question. We've got a lot of different grades. People have been sounding off. Let's see, at the last check, the question was, what grade would you give the Chargers at this point in the season? And right now, C is leading at 58%. Yeah. That's what we both picked. D is next at 25%.
Really?
And then B is third at 17%. Not a lot of A's or F's out there, but it looks like, and I guess you can expect this on a 3-game losing streak, that Chargers fans have gone from very optimistic to all of a sudden pretty pessimistic about the season.
But we always do that every year. I mean, it flows so fast. Remember the momentum that was picked up at the end of the season last year, in the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. You are only as good as your last football game. That's such a cliche in football and any other sport for that matter, but especially in football, and that's so very true, especially coming off a disastrous loss like they had yesterday.
Let me read a couple of the responses. Okay. Ron says, before yesterday, a B-, today, a D+. That's a bad test grade.
But that's a huge swing.
Yeah. Luigi, C+. Chris says so far I'd say a B. Injuries have killed him the past few weeks, and a healthy team could easily be 7-2. That's a little more optimistic. Another Chris says you have to go with C+, because as of now there is some good but bad and just overall just above mediocrity. Let's see, C- from Lisa. So, you know, you're getting kind of that definitely middle range, and I think Charger fans are realistic about where the team is right now. Got a question also in from Scott. He said, got to discuss Frank Reich, Donald Butler, DJ Fluker, and King Dunlap. I'm going to start with Donald Butler because, to me, he's been one of the most disappointing players for the Chargers this season. Gets the big contract, gets the big money, and he just hasn't looked like the same player at middle linebacker who was really kind of a fringe Pro Bowler for his first few seasons. And now, I mean, he looks out there. He looks tentative, not aggressive, maybe physically something off with him. There's definitely something that's going on with Donald Butler. I hope over the bye, if there is a health issue, he can get healthy and start playing like he was, because the Chargers just have a gaping hole now in the middle of the defense, and the Dolphins were able to exploit it all game long.
Well, I think that yesterday was a prime example. We talk about playing guys like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady and how brutal they can be. Ryan Tannehill's not the greatest quarterback. He's a good kid. He's a good quarterback. But he's more of a mobile quarterback, and that's what Joe Philbin was able to do to the Chargers defense yesterday. When you don't have that strong middle defense there, that's where you can be exploited because the kid can get out of the pocket and he can run. I've never seen him run like that before, not since his A&M days, but he just made him look terrible.
Yeah, DJ Fluker has also been disappointing. He's gone up against some of the best edge rushers in the game the last 3 weeks, and it's not his specialty, blocking those fast guys around the edge. He's a run blocker. Get Ryan Matthews in there. Get that aggression back and have those offensive linemen moving forward instead of back on their heels. Maybe that'll help. I don't have a problem with Frank Reich. I mean, I don't think the play calling, maybe on that fourth down, I didn't love what they ran, but I don't think that's why they lost the game. For sure.
Look, if the fourth down goes through and they get the touchdown again, even if they just advanced and they didn't get the touchdown, maybe they got a field goal, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I like what Frank Reich has called this year. I know that he's got a lot of injuries. You're talking about 2 of their running backs. We're down to Brandon Oliver at this point, so you're talking 2 major running backs that are out, and he's making it work. And 3 weeks ago, we were talking about Phillip Rivers possibly for MVP. Now, that's out of the question now. Terrible game yesterday, but I like what Frank Reich has called so far this season.
All right, every week, Steve, we got a segment where we go ahead and discuss 3 questions around the NFL, and we bring in our web editor, Ferris. So we've got Ferris here who's got his 3 questions again for us. Now, I think these are a surprise to you. I did see a couple of yours. Go ahead with question number 1, Ferris. Good to see you again.
This is by saying there's going to be no Peyton Brady questions at all.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
we can talk about that game if you want. Sure. I mean, we're fair game on anything on this program. Yeah.
I thought that if you watched any games yesterday, you probably got so sick of hearing anything about either of those guys that you probably have moved on.
Although I was surprised how definitive the outcome of that game was.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't see the Patriots crushing the Broncos. I didn't see the Broncos crushing the Patriots on the road.
You didn't see Peyton doing badly in cold weather?
I have a lot of respect for Peyton Manning, and it wasn't that cold. The snow was early, but field looked fine.
I've never heard Peyton Manning say this. What did he say yesterday? I don't usually stink. Today I stunk.
Yeah, Phillip Rivers, we heard earlier, kind of similar comments after the game. So. Yeah. Phillip was at least in good company yesterday. Yeah. All right, question number 1.
All right. So one of the best games yesterday, surprisingly, was the Niners-Rams game.
Yeah.
Came down to a rather insane play. Rams are up 13-10. 49ers drive all the way down to the 1-yard line. 10 seconds left in the game. They have 1 timeout. They decide, it's 3rd and goal, they decide to run a QB sneak with Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick fumbles the ball. And the Rams recover, game over. 49ers fall to 4-4. What do you guys think of that play call? What are your thoughts?
Well, it didn't work, so you can always second guess it. But I like aggressive play calling. I like going for 1 yard in the win rather than playing for overtime, which is a coin flip, even at home. So I like the aggression, and they put the ball in the hands of their best playmaker, who is their quarterback, Colin Kaepernick. Get me a yard. He may have gotten it. I mean, replays were kind of hard to tell whether he got the ball across the line before he fumbled or not. I mean, that could have easily been a game-winning touchdown. So I don't mind the aggressive play call. It probably would have been safer to run a quick pass, and if you don't make it, then you can regroup and decide what you want to do. But, I never hate putting the ball in the hands of one of your best playmakers to try to win the game from a yard out.
The only thing I heard about that was St. Louis's defense was actually criticizing them, saying, why didn't you run Frank Gore? Because but to me, that's the expected play. You're going to run the bull right up the middle. Everybody knows that's coming. I agree with you, but I'm thinking if you're going to do it with Kaepernick, and again, this is Monday morning quarterbacking, take him on a sweep or something. Don't let him get log jammed up in there. Let him make a play out on the end or something.
All right, question number 2.
Question 2. Okay, so we kind of talked about this in our column last week, but the AFC and NFC wildcard teams right now, if the playoffs started today, your AFC teams are the Steelers and Chiefs. Your NFC teams are Dallas and Seattle. Who are your, making your prediction right now from both conferences? Who are your 2 wild card teams in each conference?
Well, when I wrote about it last week, I favored the Ravens and the Chiefs, even over the Chargers before I knew they were going to lose this game, because I like the remaining schedules. I like the tiebreaker possibilities. After what the Steelers did to the Ravens, though, last night, I think I have to take Baltimore out of there. So I'm going to leave
Yeah.
Kansas City in. And now I think I'm trying to decide between either Pittsburgh or maybe Miami. You know what? Let's give the Dolphins a little bit of credit for what they did to the Chargers. We know the Chargers are a pretty decent team. And I think what the Dolphins did to them yesterday is worthy of recognition and a little bit of faith. So why don't I go out on a limb and say the Dolphins are the team that make the playoffs along with the Chiefs at this point, and I'll keep the Steelers still out for now.
I like what you've got there. The thing is that AFC North and that AFC East are both going to be a huge battle before the end of the season. All those teams are right there with each other. The Jets are the only team that are really out of the race. But if you look at the AFC North, everybody's right in the race, so anything could happen. And I know that Pittsburgh and Baltimore are finished with their series, but I think the rest of them still play each other. Yeah. So I like the fact that Pittsburgh's in there, and I think that quite possibly the Dolphins might make a play in there as well. As far as the NFC is concerned, I think Green Bay may make a play before this is all over with, because I just don't know what's going to happen with Tony Romo in Dallas. I can't believe the guy is coming back to play in London next week. But they're sitting at 5 right now. I just don't know if they can sustain that.
I still think Green Bay is going to pass Detroit at some point in the North and the NFC. I think Detroit can get a wild card. The question is, Seattle or San Francisco? I mean, someone's getting left out at this point. Right now, it's got to be San Francisco, but it wouldn't stun me. I mean, Seattle's been very shaky. Even their win over the Raiders yesterday, they didn't put Oakland away until very late. That Super Bowl defense is always tough. You get everyone's best effort. You're a little more beat up because you played more games the previous season than the rest of the teams, and it really looks like they're having trouble coping with the success that they had at the end of last season. So maybe Seattle gets left out. That's a possibility.
I want to jump back really quickly to the AFC North, which is insane because every team in that division is in the playoff race. They're all above 500. And I think that Browns-Bengals game Thursday night, I'm going to say the team that loses that game is out of the playoff race.
Wow. Even Cincinnati leads the division right now.
I think this could be, honestly, the biggest Browns game. If you think about it, since they haven't been in the playoffs since 2002. They haven't won a playoff game since 1994. This could be their biggest game in 12 years?
Yeah. I still think it's too early to tell what's going to happen because you got 5-2-1 Bengals, 6-3 Steelers, who just 3 weeks ago were god-awful.
Yeah.
The Browns, who are at 5-3, and the Ravens, who are a pretty decent 5-4 team right now. Again, anything can happen going in. I think it's still way too early to tell, but I don't trust the Bengals. I'm still going to go with, I think maybe you're right. I think maybe this is the Browns season in Pittsburgh.
He's been on the Bills bandwagon since the beginning of the year. Are you still there?
Yeah. Love the Bills.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, question number 3. And then you can have some candy.
Can have some candy.
So this one's very simple. I want you to go out on a limb and give me one crazy prediction for the rest of the season. Just one prediction. For each of you.
I think I just gave you one in Miami making the playoffs. Was pretty crazy at this point. That is crazy. And then the other one that I made, just Seattle not making the playoffs, also kind of crazy. But another crazy prediction besides that, how about this? How about, let's say that there's a surprise AFC championship game, because I don't know that both New England and Denver are going to get there. That's what everyone's expecting now. A rematch of the Patriots and the Broncos game yesterday. But I look at that, and one of those two teams is definitely going to stumble in one of their playoff games. Even if they have a bye, someone's losing at home. You're going to have an unexpected AFC championship participant. I'm going to say either the Dolphins or the Colts get to the AFC championship game.
Wow.
That's bold.
That's really bold.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go with, because my fantasy football quarterback is done with Nick Foles. And if I had told you at the beginning of the season that Mark Sanchez was going to lead the Philadelphia Eagles to the NFC East Championship and into the playoffs, you would have laughed at
That would have been bold.
I think that's probably is what's going to happen now.
It could happen.
I just don't think the Romo's going to be healthy. I think that the Redskins are just in disarray. They don't know what they're doing from the ownership to coaching right now. Things seem to be falling apart. And the Giants are the Giants. They're just unpredictable
Wildly
right now.
inconsistent.
Wildly inconsistent. They
Mark
are the
Sanchez and the Eagles to the top
Mark
of the division.
Sanchez and the Eagles
Have you
to the
picked
top
them
of
up?
the
So you're saying
Michael?
potentially we could have, between both of you, we could have a Tannehill-Sanchez Super Bowl.
Oh, my gosh. That
It
would
could
be a
happen.
disaster.
It could
That would be a
happen.
bold
It
prediction.
could happen. Michael Chen wanted me to ask you about Foles and how you're feeling about that.
I'm not doing too well today.
sorry.
Yeah, I'm down about 40 points going into tonight's football game, which is not good.
That's
So
tough.
I think the season's over for me.
Sorry, Steve. Ferris, thank you very much.
Thank
Good three
you.
questions as always. Before we go, we got a bye week coming up for the Chargers.
Are we done?
We're really done. Yeah.
What happened?
I want to look ahead though because the Chargers have to find a way to respond to this adversity, and there is adversity.
Oh, what happened here?
Uh-oh.
Oh, my gosh, that's right. We have a birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ben. Happy birthday to you.
Okay, Steve, I'm glad you're a decent singer because you're the only one with the
I pulled that
microphone,
off.
but
I
I
did well.
appreciate Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Brandon.
It's
and
not nearly enough
everyone
candles
back
on there. But,
yes. There's a few short.
yeah.
But,
Wow.
yeah, all right, so it is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you
What a
very
great
much.
way for the Chargers to send you out into the bye week. You must be so happy.
I know. You know what? I'm going to say this. Every team faces some adversity in the course of a season. The Chargers have done it every single year. I mean, name a Charger season that didn't have this this moment where you thought, okay, it's done, everything's gone, I'm ready to move on to college basketball season. Every Charger season has this moment. We had it about 3 times last year. They do know how to respond. They do know how to come back to that. So let's listen to Coach McCoy and Phillip Rivers talking a little bit about what they need to do moving forward now that they're into the bye.
We'll get it back on track, I promise you. I promise you, we will get this back on track. No doubt in my mind.
You can learn a lot from these type of defeats and just kind of go back to the drawing board and seeing what you can do better. And it shows the character of what we're about and what we can, what we're going to stand for from this point forward.
We'll find out about what we're made of as far as a group of guys that we think we have, and I believe we do have, and we'll get to come back and play at home in 2 weeks, and we'll have some time to regroup physically and mentally. We got to get ready to roll.
Okay, that's the crossroads I was talking about. And Steve saying no bolo tie. No, and in fact, if you'll notice, Phillip Rivers had a mustache during the game
and
did
gone.
not have it after the game. In fact, several of their players who kind of got into the Movember mustache fun decided not so much fun
It's
after
not so much fun.
37. See?
Look at that.
Gone. Clean shaven
thinking,
after the game.
I thought, didn't I see pictures of him before warming up with the mustache?
Yep.
Yeah,
Shaved it after the game.
The one thing that I noticed in that is Antonio Gates and the ascot. I think, that says everything about where this season is going from here. It's all going uphill from here. You see a guy in an ascot in a locker room after a game, forget about it.
If there's a couple of guys that I trust, though, to keep the ship at an even keel after a loss like that, it's those two guys. It's Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates. They've been there so many times before, and the Chargers have always responded in December, late November with some of their best football. I don't know why we wouldn't think that should happen again, especially with this 2 weeks to get healthy, get rested, and hopefully get some of those key players back that they've obviously been missing, like Ryan Matthews and Melvin Ingram and Jerry Atachu and maybe Jason Verrett. I mean, these are guys that are making key plays early in the season, and we haven't seen them all in a month and a half.
The fact that this team is 5-4 at this point with all those injuries says everything you need to know. Sure, you can give them the C grade like I did, but that says everything that you need to know about this football team. The fact that they're hanging in there is pretty amazing. It's going to be a bitter week and a half coming off 3 losses into a bye week. That's not the way you want to go into it. But, again, the back half of their schedule says everything about this football team. And I believe in Mike McCoy. I don't know if they'll get into the playoffs, but they'll prove it because they have to prove it against the best teams in the NFL.
Steve, really appreciate you coming in early. I know you got busy long days like I do, so it was a lot of fun to have you out here on the cafe patio for Bolts Brown Bag. Thank you.
Do I get a candy?
You get all the candy. You get birthday
Thank
cake,
you.
too,
Well, I
apparently.
appreciate that.
Thanks for everyone for my birthday. I see the cake is coming out, so I'm going to enjoy some of that. We will be here next week, even on the bye week. We will have Bolts Brown Bag next Monday at 12:30, so make sure you join us. tune in. I think we're going to have a special show. I'm trying to line up Mark Fabiani to discuss some of the stadium issues, and hopefully he can make it either on the phone or in person. And we're going to talk about some of those issues next week during the bye week. And, of course, we'll review where the Chargers are and where they are moving forward. But for Steve Atkinson, I'm Ben Higgins. Thanks for joining us at 10news.com inside the Bolts Brown Bag.
Happy birthday.